My son banned me from my ex-husband's funeral. His cruel new wife made sure of it. But the lawyer demanded my presence. When I arrived, the room fell silent. Then he read the will, and everyone gasped. Because inside was something that shattered their perfect lie. When I first stepped into our beautiful townhouse in Boston all those years ago, I truly believed it was the start of something wonderful. I was young, full of dreams, and madly in love with Robert Carter. Robert was an ambitious architect who seemed to light up every room he entered, charming everyone effortlessly. His dreams were big, contagious even, and soon they became mine as well. We married quickly, both excited to build a life together, unaware that the foundations we laid were not as solid as I had imagined. In those early years, I had my own career as an interior designer, something I genuinely loved. However, as Robert's career flourished, it became natural for me to step back, to support his ambitions fully. It wasn't a conscious choice to give up my dreams. Rather, it felt like a gentle compromise, part of the loving support I wanted to provide as his partner. Our sons arrived soon after. Justin, my firstborn, and Lucas, 3 years younger. Raising them was a joy and, at times, a challenge. Motherhood occupied my days, while evenings were reserved for supporting Robert, hosting dinner parties for his influential clients, attending elegant galas, and smiling through countless business gatherings. Over time, though, something changed. It was subtle at first, barely noticeable. Robert began to drift emotionally, slowly, without fuss or anger, just quietly slipping away. Conversations grew shorter, his interest in my days diminished, and soon I began to feel invisible. During public events, Robert's subtle jabs started to appear, masked as casual jokes. "Oh, Evelyn," he would chuckle. "She's here just to make the place look nice." His words stung, but I always laughed along with everyone else, hiding my pain beneath practiced smiles. Justin and Lucas adored their father, naturally drawn to his confident presence and grand promises. Robert gave them all the luxuries of life, often overshadowing my simpler, quieter gestures. Eventually, I felt less like their mother and more like the caretaker, a supporting character in their lives. When Justin announced his engagement to Sophia, a lovely girl from a distinguished family, I was thrilled. Sophia had warmth and grace, qualities I hoped would blend smoothly into our fractured family, perhaps even helping to heal it. But by then, Robert had changed dramatically. He became more distant and colder, often spending late hours at his office with his young assistant, Victoria. At first, I dismissed it as the demands of his thriving career. I ignored my gut feelings because the truth was unbearable to face. It was a crisp autumn evening when Robert finally shattered the illusion I'd clung to. He stood by the window, barely looking at me, his voice steady yet detached. "Evelyn, perhaps it's best if we separate for a while," he said casually, as though discussing plans for dinner. I felt my heart squeeze painfully. "You mean a divorce?" I asked, barely breathing. He sighed, irritated. "Let's not dramatize. Just some space. We both know we've drifted apart." What he meant was he had drifted. Robert had already moved forward, silently replacing me, but I refused to crumble in front of him. I quietly packed my things, leaving the home I'd once lovingly decorated, memories of our family embedded in every corner. Providence became my sanctuary, a modest apartment my new home. Financial reality hit quickly, forcing me back into the workforce. At 65, options weren't abundant. I settled into a position as a library assistant. It was quiet, unassuming work, a reflection of the new, solitary life I now led. In those dark, lonely months, the bright spot was reconnecting with my elder sister, Margaret. She visited me in Providence, gentle and understanding as always. Margaret was 70, retired after decades as a school principal, wise and deeply empathetic. "You've always been stronger than you know, Evelyn," she told me one afternoon, her warm hand squeezing mine gently. "This isn't your ending. It's just a pause." Margaret's words stayed with me, a comforting mantra during long, sleepless nights. But life, ever cruel, took Margaret away suddenly in a terrible car accident shortly after that visit. Her passing left me numb, more isolated than before. Months passed quietly until one cold winter morning my phone rang. It was Lucas, his voice strained and hesitant. "Mom, Dad's gone. He had a stroke." I felt a rush of conflicting emotions, sadness, disbelief, regret, and something darker I couldn't quite name. I attended Robert's funeral reluctantly, entering the grand chapel cautiously, aware of every judgmental glance thrown my way. Victoria sat front row, composed but cold, flanked by Justin and Lucas. Sophia stood behind Justin, looking uncomfortable. I sat quietly in the back, a ghost of the past returning briefly. At the funeral reception, Robert's lawyer, Michael Brennan, announced he would read parts of Robert's will. Murmurs filled the room as he spoke clearly and deliberately, surprising us all. "To Evelyn Carter," Michael said, his voice firm, "I leave the Boston townhouse and a trust of $950,000 to support young women pursuing careers in architecture. May this repay in some small measure all you sacrificed." Gasps echoed through the room. Victoria turned pale, clearly unprepared for such news. Justin and Lucas looked shocked, and I felt my heartbeat quicken with confusion and disbelief. Robert's generosity, now revealed, seemed out of character after all the cold years of neglect. The next days felt surreal, my mind racing with unanswered questions. That's when I found an old, yellowed envelope in my mailbox, postmarked months earlier, before Margaret's accident. Trembling, I recognized Margaret's neat handwriting. Inside was a single letter, written in Robert's unmistakable script. "Evelyn," it began, "if you're reading this, I failed to find the courage to say it myself. My neglect and betrayal came from my own weakness and insecurity. You deserved better than I ever gave. Forgive me if you can." I sat motionless, tears streaming down my cheeks. Margaret had safeguarded this letter, sensing its future significance. Robert's words didn't erase the pain, but for the first time in years, they lifted a weight I hadn't known I carried. Perhaps I wasn't the invisible, discarded woman I'd convinced myself I had become. As I processed this revelation, Michael Brennan called again, his voice cautious. "Mrs. Carter," he said, "I need to discuss something significant we uncovered during the estate settlement. Something Robert had hidden." My chest tightened. "What is it?" "It seems Robert secretly established additional funds, assets worth nearly $2 million, intentionally kept hidden during your divorce proceedings. They were meant exclusively for Justin and Lucas. We suspect they knew about this." I felt betrayal twist sharply again, this time deeper because it involved my sons. Pain surged anew, mixing with the earlier relief. I realized clearly at that moment. Robert's apology came late, but perhaps this betrayal, this hidden truth, was an opportunity, a strange kind of justice. It was time to reclaim what I had lost, not just financially but emotionally. I knew what I needed to do. But first, I had a choice. I could confront them all immediately, or quietly, carefully plan my next steps. My decision was clear. Justice would come, but on my terms, quietly, decisively. For the first time in many years, I felt a sense of purpose, strength slowly returning to my wounded heart. For days after Michael Brennan's phone call, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Justin and Lucas, my sons, the children I had nurtured, loved, and supported, silently conspiring with Robert, keeping secrets from me. The betrayal felt deep, cold, and personal, cutting right into the heart of who I believed myself to be as their mother. I couldn't understand how I had missed the signs, or why they chose to hide Robert's deceitful arrangements from me. One morning, as I sat alone at the kitchen table in my Providence apartment, sipping lukewarm tea, my phone rang again. It was Lucas this time, his voice hesitant, almost nervous. "Mom, can we talk? I know there's a lot going on, but we need to discuss the inheritance." I paused for a moment, feeling bitterness rising. I forced myself to stay calm. "Of course, Lucas," I said quietly. "But first, tell me something. Did you know about your father's hidden assets? The $2 million he secretly put aside." There was silence, uncomfortable and thick. Eventually, Lucas sighed deeply. "Yes," he admitted quietly. "But, Mom, it wasn't like you think. Dad convinced us it was necessary, said it would protect us financially from any future disputes. He told us you wouldn't understand." I felt a sharp pain in my chest at his words. "And you believed him," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "After everything I'd done for you, after everything you know about me, you believed I would somehow betray my own children?" Lucas's voice softened, remorse edging into it. "I'm sorry, Mom. We never intended to hurt you." "You didn't intend to," I repeated quietly. "But you did." I ended the call gently but firmly, telling Lucas we could talk more later. I wasn't ready yet. I needed time and space to understand my feelings clearly, to make sense of the betrayal. I decided that before any further conversations took place, I had to uncover everything hidden from me, all the ugly details Robert and possibly Victoria had carefully concealed. It was clear I needed professional help, someone neutral, skilled, and discreet. I contacted a private investigator, Sarah Mitchell, who came highly recommended by Margaret's former colleague. Sarah was efficient, focused, and empathetic. We met at a quiet cafe near my apartment. She listened carefully, taking notes as I explained everything. "Mrs. Carter," Sarah said firmly, closing her notebook, "I'll find the truth for you. People often underestimate how damaging betrayal can be, especially when it involves family. I'll make sure we uncover everything." As days turned into weeks, Sarah's discoveries unfolded quietly yet powerfully. She revealed that Robert's hidden accounts weren't just intended for my sons. Victoria had benefited significantly, withdrawing large sums regularly, spending extravagantly on luxurious vacations and designer clothing. My anger toward Robert was intense, but knowing Victoria, who had replaced me in my own life, had also gained financially at my expense felt like salt poured into an open wound. Sarah also provided evidence that Justin had been fully aware and actively involved in managing Robert's hidden assets, whereas Lucas appeared less deeply entangled, mostly passively informed. Still, it hurt deeply to see Lucas caught in this web, even if less actively. Throughout this painful revelation, Sophia reached out to me. We met quietly one afternoon in Boston, in a park near my former townhouse. Sitting beneath the trees, her young face gentle with genuine concern, Sophia spoke openly. "Evelyn, I want you to know I had no idea about any of this. Justin never mentioned anything to me." Her sincerity comforted me slightly. Sophia represented hope for a better future, an honest relationship untainted by deception. "Sophia," I said softly, "thank you for telling me this. But please be careful. The Carter family seems to hide secrets effortlessly." She nodded, sadness filling her eyes. "I see things differently now. Honestly, I'm reconsidering my future with Justin. Trust means everything to me, Evelyn." That conversation left me with mixed emotions. Relief at Sophia's honesty, sadness at the realization my family was unraveling further. However, my mind was already turning toward action. Now armed with Sarah's evidence, I knew I had to confront this betrayal publicly. Quiet acceptance was no longer an option. Justice, however painful, was necessary. Michael Brennan arranged a private meeting to discuss our next steps. Sitting across from him in his quiet office, I laid out the proof Sarah had uncovered. Michael was visibly stunned. "Evelyn, this changes everything," he said carefully. "With this evidence, you can legally reclaim all of Robert's hidden assets. Victoria and your sons could face serious consequences. Will there be public exposure?" I asked quietly, feeling anxious but determined. He nodded slowly. "It's likely. But you must understand, Evelyn, reclaiming your rightful inheritance might damage your family relationships irreparably." I took a deep breath, thinking of Margaret's strength, her belief in my resilience. "My relationships were damaged the moment they chose betrayal," I said clearly. "I'm reclaiming my dignity, Michael, not just my financial rights." The court hearing was brief but decisive. Victoria's claims were quickly dismissed when faced with overwhelming evidence of fraud and financial misconduct. Justin sat rigidly beside her, his face tight with anger and embarrassment. Lucas sat separately, quietly devastated, unable to meet my eyes. I watched as my former life unraveled before everyone's eyes, publicly and painfully. But for the first time in years, I stood tall, feeling empowered. News spread rapidly in our social circles, publicly shaming Victoria and my sons. Justin immediately blamed me for destroying his reputation, refusing to acknowledge his own responsibility. Victoria retreated from public view, bitter and humiliated. Lucas, however, began to show signs of genuine remorse. He reached out carefully again, his voice humble and sincere. "Mom, I know I've deeply hurt you," he said quietly over the phone one evening. "I'm not expecting forgiveness yet, but please know I'm truly sorry." His apology didn't erase the betrayal, but it softened my heart slightly. "I hear you, Lucas," I said calmly, maintaining healthy boundaries. "Give us both time. Right now, I need space." I returned to my Boston townhouse not triumphantly, but quietly, determined to restore my life and independence. Sitting alone in the familiar rooms I had once carefully designed, I felt sadness yet also liberation. The walls, once symbols of neglect, now represented my quiet resilience. For the first time, I recognized clearly the strength I had always possessed, but had allowed Robert to diminish. I thought deeply about Margaret and her unwavering belief in my strength. I decided to establish a foundation named after her. The Margaret Thompson Foundation, dedicated to empowering single mothers restarting their careers. It was my quiet yet powerful response, my true revenge, not bitterness or anger, but a renewed commitment to helping women find their voices again. As the weeks passed, news of the foundation's establishment spread. Letters and messages from women eager to rebuild their lives arrived daily, reminding me of my purpose, healing the betrayal's wounds slowly. Sophia reached out again, proudly expressing support for my decision, confirming she'd ended her relationship with Justin, unable to trust him anymore. Each day, my independence grew stronger. The betrayal had deeply hurt me, but it hadn't broken me. Instead, it had cleared my vision, helping me rediscover my identity, empowering me to take back control of my life on my own terms. My journey wasn't yet complete, but for the first time, I felt hopeful about the future. A future defined not by others, but solely by me. Returning to the Boston townhouse felt strange at first. It was the same home I'd once carefully designed, filled with memories both beautiful and painful. I stood in the doorway for a long moment, hesitant, almost afraid to step back into the past. But I knew this wasn't about returning to who I'd once been. Instead, this was about reclaiming myself, the woman I'd forgotten amid years of emotional neglect. As I settled in, I carefully removed every trace of Victoria's influence. Her flashy decor, the overly extravagant furniture, everything that represented the hollow extravagance of Robert's second life. With each piece I removed, I felt lighter, as if clearing out physical objects was helping clear out the emotional weight I carried. Soon, the home began to feel genuinely mine again, calming and welcoming, a reflection of the woman I had become through hardship and betrayal. Days passed quietly at first. I poured myself into the Margaret Thompson Foundation, working from a small home office filled with gentle sunlight. Letters from struggling women arrived daily, each story both heartbreaking and inspiring. Helping them made my own wounds feel lighter, gradually replaced by purpose and strength. I was reclaiming my identity not through bitterness, but by empowering others, a revenge sweeter and more meaningful than anger or resentment could ever be. But one morning, as I sorted through the mail, a small, formal envelope stood out. It was from Victoria. My pulse quickened uncomfortably as I opened it slowly. Inside was a short, typed note filled with restrained anger. "Evelyn, I hope you're satisfied. You've won your little battle, but don't think I'm finished yet." The words sent a chill down my spine. Although I'd expected resentment, Victoria's bitterness felt threatening. It reminded me sharply of the lingering pain she'd caused. I folded the letter carefully, setting it aside. I wouldn't respond, not yet. Victoria no longer held power over me, and I wouldn't allow her bitterness to disrupt my newfound peace. Yet, the unsettling feeling remained. That afternoon, I met Sophia again at a small cafe near Beacon Street. She was visibly upset, her eyes troubled. After brief pleasantries, she leaned forward, whispering urgently. "Evelyn, Justin's furious. He blames you entirely. He says you destroyed his career and his reputation." I sighed deeply, feeling the familiar hurt returning. "Justin destroyed his own reputation," I said firmly, trying to mask the pain. "He chose secrecy and betrayal. I didn't force his hand." Sophia nodded sadly. "I know, Evelyn. But please be careful. Justin and Victoria are very close now. He's angry enough to do something reckless." I looked into Sophia's sincere eyes, knowing she spoke from genuine concern. The warning unsettled me deeply. "Thank you for telling me," I said softly. "I'll be careful." After leaving Sophia, I contacted Sarah Mitchell immediately, asking her to quietly monitor Justin and Victoria's activities. "Evelyn," Sarah reassured me, sensing my unease, "I'll make sure nothing happens without your knowledge." In the following days, my tension eased slightly. I chose to focus again on the foundation, inviting Lucas to visit me one afternoon. Despite the complicated history, I missed my son. His betrayal had deeply hurt, but unlike Justin, Lucas had shown genuine remorse. He arrived at my doorstep, hesitant, nervous. We sat awkwardly in the living room, silence stretching painfully between us. Eventually, Lucas spoke softly. "I didn't know if you'd want to see me again, Mom. I wouldn't blame you if you didn't." I looked at my younger son, noticing the sincerity in his eyes. "Lucas, you deeply hurt me. But unlike Justin, you've taken responsibility. I appreciate your honesty." He nodded slowly, eyes filling slightly with relief. "I want to help, Mom. Anything you need. I want to rebuild trust." "I'll need time," I said firmly, holding his gaze. "But I'm open to trying." That afternoon, Lucas quietly helped me rearrange furniture, symbolically rebuilding what had been damaged. As we worked, we talked carefully about Margaret, about the foundation, and gradually even about Robert. The wounds were still raw, but talking openly with Lucas felt like gentle healing. By evening, I felt hopeful for the first time since discovering the betrayal. Maybe reconciliation wasn't impossible after all. Days later, Sarah Mitchell called urgently, her voice tense. "Evelyn, I found something troubling. Justin and Victoria met with a lawyer known for aggressive tactics. They seem to be planning something, possibly challenging the foundation legally to create scandal, undermine your credibility." My heart sank at Sarah's warning. I hadn't anticipated such direct hostility, but perhaps I should have. "What should we do, Sarah?" "First, remain calm," she advised quickly. "I'll gather evidence. You might want to warn Lucas. It appears Justin might involve him unwillingly." I called Lucas immediately, my voice trembling slightly as I explained. Lucas sounded shocked and deeply upset. "Justin never mentioned anything to me, Mom," he assured me quickly. "I promise I'll help stop this." His response comforted me somewhat. I realized clearly now that Justin, in his bitterness, had gone too far. I'd given him space, hoping he'd recognize his mistakes independently, but his anger had turned vindictive. I knew now I had no choice but to confront him directly. 2 days later, I arranged a private meeting with Justin at a neutral location, a small park near the Charles River. It was painful seeing him, my firstborn son, once gentle, now hardened with resentment. He greeted me coldly, distant and defensive. "What do you want, Mom?" Justin asked impatiently, his eyes avoiding mine. "I want honesty, Justin," I said calmly. "Why are you and Victoria doing this?" His eyes flared with anger. "Because you humiliated us. You took everything." "Justin," I responded gently yet firmly, "your father betrayed me and you knowingly participated. You made those choices. I reclaimed what was rightfully mine. The humiliation you feel now is your own doing." He glared silently, clearly unmoved by my words. "I don't owe you anything," he snapped coldly. "I'm your mother, Justin," I said softly, my voice shaking. "At least owe me truth." Justin stood abruptly, avoiding my gaze. "We're done here," he muttered, turning away. My heart broke as he left, walking briskly without looking back. That evening back home, I sat quietly, feeling deep sorrow mixed with determination. Justin's hatred wounded me profoundly, yet I understood now. His path was his own. My responsibility was to myself, my integrity, and the women who depended on the Margaret Thompson Foundation. If Justin and Victoria wanted a fight, I'd meet it courageously, without losing sight of myself. In the quiet solitude of my reclaimed home, Margaret's words echoed gently. "You've always been stronger than you know." Her wisdom comforted me, reminding me my strength wasn't defined by others, but by my own sense of self. The following day, Lucas called again, worried. "Mom, Justin's out of control. But I promise you, I'll stand by you this time. Whatever happens, you're not alone." His words brought tears to my eyes, tears of gratitude, relief, and hope. Lucas had hurt me, but his sincere effort to make amends mattered deeply. "Thank you, Lucas," I whispered quietly. "We'll face this together." As I ended the call, I realized something clearly. The betrayal had deeply wounded me, but it also freed me, empowering me in ways I'd never anticipated. The battle ahead felt daunting, yet for the first time, I faced it without fear, confident in who I'd become, knowing clearly the strongest revenge wasn't bitterness or anger, but simply reclaiming myself fully, honestly, and courageously. After my difficult conversation with Justin, I felt emotionally drained. Each passing day brought new anxieties, heightened by the realization that Victoria and Justin were determined to strike back. Still, I reminded myself repeatedly that strength came from clarity and calmness. I couldn't afford to fall apart, not now. Lucas began spending more time with me, genuinely trying to mend what was broken. His remorse was evident in the gentle, cautious way he spoke to me. During quiet evenings at home, he'd carefully share small memories from his childhood, perhaps trying to remind us both of the bond we'd shared before everything became complicated. One rainy afternoon, as we were sorting through old photographs in the living room, Lucas paused, holding a picture of Robert and Justin standing together proudly. He sighed heavily, shaking his head. "Mom, I can't believe Justin has become this bitter. We weren't raised this way. Dad's mistakes were his own, but we didn't have to follow him." I nodded slowly, touched by his honesty. "Sometimes bitterness blinds us," I said quietly. "Justin feels hurt and humiliated, but he's misdirecting his anger." Lucas glanced at me thoughtfully. "Do you ever wish you'd handled things differently?" "Yes," I admitted openly. "But not in the way Justin thinks. I wish I'd stood up for myself earlier, before the betrayal ran so deep. I allowed myself to fade away slowly. I lost sight of who I was. Lucas placed his hand over mine gently. You're stronger now, Mom. I see that clearly. Maybe Justin will see it eventually too. That evening, after Lucas left, I sat quietly, contemplating my life's journey. Lucas's words echoed gently, reinforcing my belief that the strongest revenge was reclaiming myself, refusing to fade into silence again. Days passed, filled with managing the Margaret Thompson Foundation and handling ongoing legal concerns. Sarah Mitchell continued to update me regularly, monitoring Justin and Victoria's actions carefully. It wasn't long before she contacted me urgently again, her voice serious. Evelyn, they're making their move, Sarah warned. Justin and Victoria have filed a lawsuit claiming your foundation is funded through illegally obtained assets from Robert's estate. They're trying to publicly smear your reputation. I felt anger flare briefly, but quickly forced myself to remain calm. Can they succeed, Sarah? No, Sarah reassured firmly. Our evidence is solid, but they're clearly trying to create a public scandal, hoping it'll pressure you into settling. Then we must fight, I said decisively. Not just for myself, but for every woman counting on the foundation's support. Sarah agreed, determined and focused. I knew confronting Justin and Victoria publicly was inevitable. Still, the idea unsettled me deeply. Despite everything, Justin was still my son, and it pained me to fight openly against him. Lucas came to see me the night before the scheduled court hearing. His presence brought comfort, easing my anxious thoughts. As we sat quietly together, he suddenly turned to me, his voice filled with determination. Mom, I want to speak in court tomorrow. It's important people know the truth, that Justin's motives aren't about justice. They're driven by bitterness and resentment. I hesitated, touched by his courage. Lucas, you don't have to put yourself in the middle. This is my fight. He shook his head firmly. No, Mom, this is our fight. I stood silently once. I won't do that again. His words deeply moved me. After years of feeling isolated and forgotten, Lucas's genuine support made me realize the power of forgiveness and understanding. Maybe Justin's bitterness had twisted his view, but Lucas had chosen a different path. His support strengthened my resolve for the difficult day ahead. The courthouse was crowded, filled with curious faces from our past social circles. I walked in quietly with Lucas and Sarah beside me, ignoring the whispers. Justin sat rigidly beside Victoria, eyes cold and determined. My heart ached deeply at seeing him like that, my son, now a stranger filled with anger. The courtroom grew quiet as the judge called the session to order. Justin's attorney immediately began accusing me of manipulating Robert's assets, exploiting his guilt, and misusing the inheritance. His words were sharp, intended to humiliate me publicly. Michael Brennan spoke firmly in my defense, clearly presenting the evidence Sarah had carefully gathered. Each detail he shared revealed Justin's and Victoria's own deceit, exposing their selfishness to everyone in the room. When Lucas took the stand, a tense silence settled over the courtroom. He spoke calmly yet powerfully, addressing the judge directly. My mother sacrificed everything for our family, he began softly. My father betrayed her, hurt her deeply, and she never retaliated with anger or bitterness. Justin and Victoria are driven by resentment, not justice. The Margaret Thompson Foundation was established to help others, not hurt anyone. My mother deserves justice, and so do the women she's supporting. Lucas's honesty resonated clearly, quiet whispers filling the courtroom as he finished. Justin's face darkened with anger, but Victoria sat stunned, clearly unprepared for Lucas's brave support of me. In the end, the judge dismissed Justin's claims decisively, declaring publicly that the accusations against me were groundless and malicious. The courtroom buzzed loudly as Justin stormed out, refusing to look at me. Victoria followed, defeated and humiliated again. Afterward, reporters tried questioning me outside the courthouse. Calmly, I spoke briefly, my voice firm yet gentle. My purpose has never been revenge or bitterness, I said clearly. It's always been about reclaiming myself and helping others do the same. That's all that matters now. Back home that evening, Lucas stayed with me, quietly supporting me as emotions overwhelmed me. I felt sadness for Justin's anger, but mostly gratitude for Lucas's courage and honesty. Late that night, after Lucas left, my phone buzzed quietly. It was a brief message from Sophia. Evelyn, I'm so proud of you. Today, you showed everyone what real strength looks like. Take care of yourself. Her words warmed my heart deeply, reassuring me that my actions had mattered, not just to myself, but to others watching closely. In the weeks following the court ruling, my life began settling into a peaceful rhythm. The Margaret Thompson Foundation flourished, helping numerous women regain their strength and independence. Lucas and I continued rebuilding our relationship, cautiously yet genuinely reconnecting, forming a stronger bond through shared understanding. Justin remained distant, unwilling or unable to let go of his bitterness. Victoria quietly retreated from Boston, moving elsewhere to escape public shame. Part of me felt sadness for them both, knowing their choices had isolated them deeply, leaving them bitter and alone. I, however, found genuine peace. Not from revenge or public victory, but from rediscovering my strength, reclaiming my voice, and refusing to ever again be diminished by anyone else's actions. Margaret's gentle words continued guiding me, reminding me always of my own resilience. One quiet evening, as I sat alone in the living room, surrounded by memories both painful and beautiful, I finally felt truly free. Betrayal had wounded me deeply, yes, but it had also empowered me to rediscover myself fully. Lucas's courageous support, Sophia's kindness, and the countless women I'd helped. All of it mattered deeply, creating a life filled with genuine meaning and purpose. I realized clearly, as the sun set gently outside my window, that the strongest revenge was never bitterness or anger. It was quietly, powerfully reclaiming myself, honoring my true identity, and living fully, without fear or hesitation. The painful journey I'd taken had brought me exactly where I belonged, back to myself. Life after the courtroom victory was quiet, almost too quiet. There were no celebrations, no champagne toasts or bold declarations. Just peace, the kind that settles slowly, like snow covering everything in stillness. After so many years of noise, of doubts, disrespect, and betrayal, silence finally felt like comfort, not emptiness. I spent my mornings walking along the Boston public garden paths, letting the early sun warm my face, and the sound of leaves underfoot bring me calm. Every step reminded me I was still here. Every breath, every small decision was mine again. I didn't owe my life to anyone else's plans anymore. Not Robert's. Not Justin's. Not even my old self, the one who had spent decades trying to be everything for everyone else. The Margaret Thompson Foundation quickly became more than just a symbol of justice. It became a sanctuary, for others and for me. I started hosting small workshops every month, inviting women from all walks of life to come and share their stories. Most weren't looking for charity. They were looking to be heard. I knew the feeling. One woman, Teresa, a former nurse who had left an abusive marriage, cried after her first painting class. She said it was the first time she had felt seen in years. Helping these women didn't erase the past, but it gave the pain a purpose. I was turning the ashes of what had burned into something that could bloom again. Lucas continued to visit, sometimes helping with events at the foundation, sometimes just stopping by to talk. We didn't rush anything. There were still quiet wounds between us, places too tender to press too hard. But he was trying, and that mattered. I saw in him the boy I had raised, the one who used to draw me little sketches on scrap paper when I was tired, and whisper, "This is a picture of you being strong." One afternoon, Lucas brought me a small wooden box. "Dad had this in his office drawer," he said, placing it gently on the table. I didn't feel right looking inside until now. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. Inside were a few photographs, yellowed at the edges, pictures of me in our early years, holding Justin at the hospital, laughing on a beach in Cape Cod, painting a nursery wall in our old apartment. Beneath the photos was a worn notebook filled with Robert's sketches. But not of buildings, of me, of our boys, of the home we had once shared. Each sketch was delicate, soft, almost reverent. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. I simply traced the lines with my fingertips, remembering a time before everything went silent between us. "He still saw me," I whispered, "even if he stopped acting like it." Lucas nodded quietly. He just didn't know how to say it. I didn't reply. There was nothing more to say. I wasn't ready to forgive Robert, not in full. But a part of me could hold this tiny piece of him, knowing he had loved me once in a way he couldn't sustain. A few days later, I received a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a card with just 5 words. "You've made your point, Mother." No signature, but I didn't need one. I knew Justin's handwriting. I stared at the card for a long time. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even a conversation. It was a bitter acknowledgement, nothing more. But strangely, I didn't feel anger. I felt sadness. Deep, steady sadness for the son who had chosen distance over growth. He had the chance to understand me and had walked away from it. That was his loss now, not mine. I didn't reply. Not because I wanted to punish him, but because I had learned some silences are necessary. Not every door needs to stay open. Not every story needs a neat reconciliation. That's the part people don't tell you about healing. Sometimes you walk forward with unfinished chapters. And that's okay. Sophia stopped by the foundation a week later, surprising me with a box of fresh pastries. Her eyes sparkled with warmth, but I could tell she was holding something back. "I saw Justin last week," she said finally, sitting across from me in the kitchen. "He's not doing well. Drinking a lot. Angry at everyone. Still blaming you." I nodded, quietly absorbing the sting. "I'm not surprised. I told him he needed help," she continued. "But you know Justin. He thinks everyone else is wrong." I looked at her, this young woman who had once been so close to becoming part of our family. "You don't have to carry that for him," I said gently. "He made his choices." Sophia reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "I just wanted you to know that I'm proud of you. And I'm glad we met. You've given me more strength than you realize." Her words warmed me in ways I hadn't expected. For years, I had given everything to a family that took me for granted. But here now I was building something real with people who saw me, respected me, even admired me. One morning, I sat by the large window in the reading nook I'd created in the townhouse. The light was soft, spilling across the pages of my journal. I had started writing again, not to publish or impress anyone, just to reflect. To remember. To reclaim my story on my own terms. I wrote about the days I used to stay up late waiting for Robert to come home. About the birthdays I planned with love, even when no one thanked me. About the nights I cried silently in the bathtub, so the boys wouldn't hear. But I also wrote about the day I stood in court and reclaimed my voice. About the first time I opened the foundation's doors. About the smiles of women rediscovering themselves in art and conversation. I wrote about Margaret's laugh, Lucas's courage, and the quiet pride I now felt every morning I woke up in this home I had once built for someone else, but now belonged completely to me. That night, as I was closing my journal, I looked up at the framed letter from Robert, the one Margaret had saved for me. For a long time I stared at it, the ink slightly faded but the message still clear. "You were never the problem. You were the best part of my life." It didn't fix everything, but it reminded me that even in the heart of betrayal, love had once lived. And in some strange, twisted way, that love had pushed me toward the strongest version of myself. As I turned off the lights and climbed into bed, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. Not anger, not grief, not even pride. Just peace. And that, after everything, was the most powerful feeling of all. Peace has a strange rhythm. It doesn't arrive all at once, like some grand victory. It tiptoes in, moment by moment, until one day you realize the ache that used to live in your chest has faded into something quieter. That's what those days felt like for me, quiet healing. The foundation kept me busy, and for the first time in my life, I woke up not for someone else's needs, but for my own sense of purpose. I started painting again too. At first, it was just to fill the silence in the evenings. I'd sit in the back room of the townhouse, the walls still painted in soft sage from years ago, and let my brushes wander. No expectations. No one watching. Just me and the canvas. The first painting was a little clumsy, rusty hands and uncertain lines, but I loved it. It looked like freedom. Lucas would come by and sit in the room while I painted, sometimes reading, sometimes just watching in silence. He told me once, "You look happiest when you're doing this, Mom. It's like you're finally breathing." And I was. For so long, I'd been holding my breath, waiting to be seen, waiting to be chosen, waiting to be remembered. Now I was remembering myself, and that was more than enough. Then came the invitation. One afternoon, an envelope arrived in the mail. Heavy paper. Elegant font. A formal tone I recognized instantly. "You are cordially invited to the annual Carter and Whitmore Architecture Gala in honor of Robert Carter's legacy." I stared at it for a long time. At the bottom, in small print, was Justin's name listed as one of the co-hosts. I laughed under my breath. It wasn't bitter, just tired. Of course, Justin would align himself with Robert's legacy now. It was easier to hold on to the illusion of control, to use Robert's name as a shield. I placed the invitation on the kitchen table and made tea. I didn't plan to go. But later that week, Lucas stopped by and saw the envelope. "You should come," he said gently. "Why would I want to put myself through that again?" I asked, sipping my tea. "Because it's your legacy too, Mom. Dad didn't build that firm alone. You gave up your career, your time, your life to help him succeed. Everyone forgot that. Maybe it's time they remembered." I looked at him carefully. And Justin? Lucas paused. He'll be there, yes. But so will others. People who never heard your side. People who only saw the surface. I didn't respond right away. But that night, I stood in front of the mirror, brushing out my silver hair, and thought about what Lucas had said. I wasn't the same woman who had walked out of that house 10 years ago with her heart in pieces. I was stronger now. I didn't need applause. I didn't need validation. But maybe I did need closure. So I went. I wore a deep navy dress, one that made me feel like myself, simple, graceful, quietly powerful. When I arrived, the room buzzed with conversation. Faces turned as I entered. Some smiled politely. Others whispered. But I kept my head high. Sophia was there, and her face lit up when she saw me. She crossed the room and hugged me tightly. "You came," she whispered. I did. Lucas met me near the bar, offering me a drink. His eyes were warm, steady. I could tell he was proud, and that meant more than I could say. Justin saw me across the room. His expression froze. For a moment he looked like a boy again, confused, vulnerable, unsure. But the mask returned quickly. He turned away. I didn't follow him. I didn't need to. The event moved forward smoothly. Speeches were made. Robert's contributions to architecture were celebrated. And then, unexpectedly, Lucas was called to the stage. He glanced at me before walking up, holding a small note card in his hand. He spoke with grace and clarity. "My father was a brilliant man," he began. "But behind every great man is often someone whose name is never mentioned. Tonight, I want to acknowledge Evelyn Carter, my mother. She supported my father's dreams for 30 years. She built our home, raised his children, and stood in the background while he stood in the spotlight. This legacy belongs to her too." The room went quiet. I felt tears rise but didn't let them fall. I simply nodded, lips pressed together, pride swelling quietly in my chest. After the event, several people came up to me, former clients of Robert's, old friends, younger women who had only heard rumors. They offered kind words, apologies, admiration. I accepted them all with quiet grace. Justin never approached me. But as I was leaving, I passed him near the exit. He turned slightly, his expression unreadable. "Enjoyed the spotlight?" he muttered. I stopped. Looked at him carefully. "I didn't come for the spotlight, Justin. I came for the truth." He didn't respond. Just turned away. That was the last time I saw him. In the weeks that followed, life settled again. The foundation received new funding, inspired by the gala. More women joined our programs. Sophia began volunteering on weekends, sharing her experiences, and helping women with job interview prep. Lucas and I began working on a joint art and design mentorship initiative through the foundation. It felt like something good was finally growing from the wreckage. One evening, as I closed the art room at the foundation, I sat by the window and looked out over the city. The same city that once felt like it had forgotten me now felt like home again. My journey hadn't ended with justice. It hadn't ended with revenge. It continued with quiet purpose, steady growth, and new beginnings. Margaret's photograph sat on my desk, beside Robert's framed letter. I often looked at them together now, two people who shaped me in such different ways. One taught me strength. The other taught me survival. I don't miss the past, but I don't hate it either. It made me who I am. Every scar, every silence, every betrayal, it all led me here. And now I'm still standing, still growing, still creating. The strongest revenge isn't destruction. It's rebuilding. And I had rebuilt everything, starting with myself. It's strange how healing doesn't have a finish line. People talk about closure like it's a door you shut behind you and never look back. But in truth, healing is quieter. It doesn't shout. It doesn't announce itself. It comes in small things, a full night's sleep, laughter over tea, waking up and not thinking of what was lost, but what still remains. That's where I am now. Not healed completely, maybe never fully, but at peace. Peace became my new rhythm. My days weren't dramatic anymore, and that, to me, was the greatest gift. The world didn't revolve around who left, who betrayed, or who disappointed me. It revolved around what I chose to build with what was left. The Margaret Thompson Foundation grew into something beyond anything I imagined. We launched a new creative program for older women re-entering the workforce, art therapy, business mentorship, even evening writing classes. Every time a woman sat across from me and said, "I didn't think anyone would see me again," I felt a small ache in my chest. I knew that feeling. I had lived it. Lucas stayed close. He helped manage outreach programs, occasionally speaking at events about rebuilding after broken relationships, about accountability. Watching him speak, I saw glimpses of the boy he once was. He never tried to rewrite what had happened between us. He simply showed up, every day, with honesty. That, more than any apology, helped us heal. One Sunday morning, as we sorted supplies for an upcoming retreat, he paused and looked at me. "Mom, do you ever think Justin will come around?" I hesitated. "I don't know," I admitted. There was a time I waited for him to apologize. Now I've stopped waiting. If he wants to come back, he will. But I'm not holding my breath. Lucas nodded slowly. "I just miss him. The version of him that wasn't so angry." I reached over and squeezed his hand. Me too. Justin hadn't reached out again since the gala. No messages, no letters, not even another cold note like before. At first, that silence hurt, but over time I came to accept it. He had made his choices. I had made mine. There was nothing left to chase. Sophia stayed involved with the foundation, and over time, she became something like family. We didn't talk much about Justin anymore. She moved on with her life, quietly, gracefully, building her own future. Occasionally, she and I would share lunch and talk about travel, books, or the women we were helping. We kept each other company in that calm, knowing way two people do when they've seen life crack and still found beauty in the pieces. The Boston townhouse, once a place where I felt invisible, now felt entirely mine. I had changed the curtains, repainted the hallways, filled the spaces with art, mine, Margaret's, even some from women in the program. The house breathed differently now. It welcomed, instead of reminding me of everything I had lost. One room in particular became my sanctuary. I turned the old guest room into a creative retreat, a reading nook, an easel by the window, soft jazz from an old speaker. I would often sit there after dinner, tea in hand, journaling or painting, the world outside quiet and undemanding. I kept a framed photo of Margaret on the shelf. She was laughing in the picture, caught mid-sentence at a summer picnic years ago. Her eyes sparkled the way they always did when she knew something you didn't. I liked to believe she would have been proud. Maybe she even knew I'd find this path long before I did. One evening, I found myself flipping through my journal, pages and pages of memories, moments, reflections. And somewhere between stories of the past and plans for the future, I realized how far I had come. I remembered the version of me who stood in the kitchen waiting for Robert to come home, who flinched at being called too sensitive, who gave and gave until there was nothing left. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone else entirely. Still gentle, still thoughtful, but firm. I didn't disappear anymore to make others comfortable. I didn't keep quiet to keep the peace. I spoke, I stood, and I stayed true to myself. The Foundation's 10th retreat took place that fall, in a renovated farmhouse outside the city. The air was crisp, the leaves golden. I stood at the front of a small group of women, most over 50, all at some turning point in their lives. I shared my story, not the courtroom version, not the headlines or the whispers, but the real one. The long nights, the heartbreak, the rebuilding. I didn't share it for sympathy. I shared it so they'd know healing isn't pretty, but it's possible. Afterward, one woman approached me, tears in her eyes. "Thank you for saying it out loud," she said. "I didn't think I was allowed to grieve something I chose to leave." I hugged her tightly. "You're allowed to grieve. And you're allowed to begin again." When I got home from that retreat, there was a letter waiting for me. Handwritten, simple. No name on the envelope, but I recognized the writing instantly. "Mom, I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect you to forgive me. But I needed to write it. You were right. About everything. I let anger guide me. I blamed you because it was easier than admitting how much I failed you. I don't know if I'll ever be the man I should have been, but I want to try. I'm sorry for hurting you. I hope you're okay. Justin." I read it once, then again, then sat with it in my lap for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just breathed. It wasn't everything, but it was something. I didn't rush to respond. I didn't tell anyone. I let it sit like a seed. Maybe one day it would grow. Maybe not. Either way, I was okay. In the days that followed, I returned to my routines. My walks, my painting, the women at the foundation. One morning, I stood by the window with my tea, watching the first snow fall over Boston, and whispered to myself, "You're still here." It was something I used to say during the worst times, a small reminder to hold on. But now those words felt different. Not desperate, just strong. I had been betrayed, erased, and left behind. But I had rebuilt everything from the ground up, one quiet decision at a time. Not through revenge, through reclaiming. And that, I think, is the most powerful kind of justice. The kind no one can take away. I smiled as I watched the snow dance down over the street, untouched and peaceful. I didn't need the world to remember who I was. I remembered, and that was enough.